The shocking event of Lee Jae-myung declaring war on the media and deep insights with the SQ Andre. The story opens in an extremely tense atmosphere as the narrator describes the controversial working style of Lee Jae-myung. Instead of demonstrating the macro vision of a head of state, Lee is fiercely criticized for his habit of nitpicking every minor detail during cabinet meetings or work reports. This behavior makes people feel he is acting more like a department head or bureau chief than a president, revealing a lack of trust in subordinates and an extreme micromanagement mindset. This suffocation didn't stop internally, but quickly spread to the media sector as Lee began targeting general programming channels. He emphasized that these channels are specially licensed entities, so they must maintain neutrality and public interest. However, the narrator immediately notes the contradiction in this argument, as Lee seems solely focused on attacking Tv조선 and Channel A. Meanwhile, stations like MBC or JTBC, despite being viewed by many as biased toward the Democratic Party or acting as the Blue House's mouthpiece, are completely spared from his reminders or corrections. This clearly shows that Lee's goal is to gag voices unfavorable to his faction, not a genuine concern for press fairness. Continuing the developments at the cabinet meeting, Lee Jae-myung made a controversial comparison between internet print media and television. He argued that since online or print newspapers are funded by individuals, no one prohibits them. But terrestrial TV and general programming channels use limited resources and are state-licensed as a form of privilege, so they must undergo stricter control. He asked a pressure-filled question about whether these entities are truly fulfilling their duties of fairness and public interest. To reinforce his view, Lee turned to question Kim Jong-chil, the head of the Korea Communications Commission. When Kim confirmed that the law stipulates public responsibilities, Lee immediately seized upon this to launch his next attack. He complained that normally, when a court declares an acquittal or dismisses a case, the media should respect that verdict and criticize the investigative agency for wrongful prosecution. However, he expressed extreme frustration that in specific cases related to him, the media still sides with the prosecution. The narrator analyzes that Lee is alluding to serious cases like the Sangbangwol Group's illegal remittance to North Korea. Lee's anger stems from the press not joining him in attacking the prosecution, but instead maintaining skepticism about his innocence. The situation became even more serious when Lee Jae-myung openly pressured the media to side with him right in the government meeting. The narrator views this as a shocking action and a direct threat to press freedom. Lee continued to question why, when a court rules in his favor, the media turns to criticize the court instead of the prosecution for wrongful indictment. He claimed this attitude only appears in politically charged cases and questioned the neutrality of these TV channels. Clearly, he wants to steer public opinion to believe that anyone who doesn't support an acquittal for him is unfair. Facing this pressure, Kim Jong-chil tried to explain weakly that it is difficult for the state to judge media neutrality uniformly, and content control is usually entrusted to independent review bodies or civic organizations. However, Lee did not accept that answer and retorted, asking if that meant they were allowed unlimited freedom. Backed into a corner, Kim Jong-chil had to admit that freedom of speech is not absolute and can be restricted by law. The narrator describes Kim's attitude at this moment as no different from a sycophant, ready to discard principles of protecting free speech to please his superior. The story continues with Lee Jae-myung's monologue on the definition of fairness. He insisted that stations receiving broadcasting privileges must adhere to neutrality, but through the narrator's analytical lens, the neutrality Lee desires is actually subservience. The narrator points out typical hypocrisy, or double standards, as Lee regards stations like MBC or JTBC as the standard despite their clear left-leaning bias, while viewing Tv조선 and Channel as problematic simply because they report unfavorably on him. This mindset reveals infinite tolerance for his own side and ruthless punishment for opponents. Lee even sarcastically remarked that there is a misunderstanding that the press is allowed 100% freedom to do whatever they want. The narrator counters that if anyone is acting with excessive freedom, it is the leftist media channels, not the conservative ones, that are being scrutinized bit by bit. Lee's constant complaints about general programming channels show he wants to tighten the reins and will not accept any counter-arguments. The narrative expands by recalling the event on the 7th of last month in Shanghai, where Lee Jae-myung made similar remarks during a press meeting. He maintained the rhetoric that if the court rejects an indictment, the fault lies with the prosecution, yet the media keeps defending the prosecution when it involves his cases. The narrator comments that the reality is quite the opposite, as the court is being criticized for delaying Lee Jae-myung's trials, causing justice to be delayed and the public to be outraged. Yet, Lee wants to control the media to silence even those criticisms. The climax of the matter was on the 12th during a work report, when Lee likened general programming channels to nothing more than biased YouTube channels. This is a heavy insult to professional journalists. The narrator bitterly realizes that for Lee Jae-myung, YouTubers who support and praise him are the truth, while those who report opposing views are trash that needs to be cleaned up. This ideology reveals an ambition to turn the national press into a dictatorship where only a single voice is heard. Based on Lee Jae-myung's aggressive moves and uncompromising attitude in this meeting, I predict that in the short term, the administration will not stop at mere warnings. It is highly likely that the Communications Commission, under tacit direction, will conduct high-intensity surprise or periodic inspections targeting Tv조선 and Channel A. Reasons regarding violations of fairness in reporting will be used as a pretext to impose heavy administrative fines, or even threaten to revoke operating licenses if they do not change their editorial boards or content direction. We may also see the emergence of new, stricter regulations regarding speech standards on air, designed specifically to tie the hands of opposition channels. A legal battle between the government and the conservative press will erupt fiercely, and Lee Jae-myung will utilize the administrative machinery to the fullest to strangle voices criticizing him before the next crucial elections take place. The story of the confrontation between Lee Jae-myung and TV channels Tv조선 and Channel A is not merely a political conflict, but a warning bell about the fragility of freedom of speech in the face of state power. When a head of state wants to redefine truth and fairness according to his subjective will, that is when democracy faces its greatest test. Is this a necessary correction or the first step toward a media dictatorship? What do you think about Lee Jae-myung's actions and the weak response from the regulatory agency? Leave a comment below so we can discuss. Don't forget to follow the T조선 channel to update on the sharpest and most multidimensional analyses of this hot political situation.